Trump's false allegations about election integrity in Philadelphia. The Attorney General discussed these allegations at some length.
You know, the idea, the president has repeatedly suggested that there was some kind of outpouring of unexpected votes in inner city areas like Philadelphia as recently as January 13th when he walked off the NPR set. He was asked by the interviewer, what's your evidence of fraud? And he said more people voted in Philadelphia than there were voters. And that was absolute rubbish.
The January 6th committee played video from former Attorney General Bill Barr on Monday as he refuted claims of election fraud in Philadelphia. He said that former President Trump, quote, ran weaker than other Republican candidates in Pennsylvania, and there was no evidence of any irregularities in voter turnout in the city or state. Listen in to his comments.
The turnout in Philadelphia was in line with the state's turnout, and in fact, it was not as impressive as many suburban counties, and there was nothing strange about the Philadelphia turnout. It wasn't like there was all these unexpected votes that came out in Philadelphia. So, I think once you actually look at the votes, and then there's an obvious explanation. For example, in Pennsylvania, Trump ran weaker than the Republican ticket generally. He ran weaker than two of the state.
Okay, so this is absolutely wild, and I mean wild in a way that changes everything. Because when Bill Barr, of all people, comes out and says that Donald Trump absolutely knew he was guilty, that Trump knowingly broke the law, that Trump's defenses are complete nonsense, you have to stop and pay attention. This isn't some Democratic prosecutor. This isn't some never Trump Republican who's been against him from day one. This is Bill Barr, Trump's own Attorney General, the guy who defended Trump through Mueller, the guy who ran interference for Trump at the Justice Department, the guy who was literally nicknamed Trump's fixer because of how loyal he seemed. And now he's flipping. Now he's going on national television and absolutely eviscerating Trump's legal defenses, calling his conduct nauseating, despicable, criminal, saying Trump knew he lost the election and did it anyway, that he obstructed justice, that he brought all of these charges on himself. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. This is massive, people. This is the kind of testimony that prosecutors dream about. Because when your own former Attorney General, the guy who was in the room, who had access to all the information, who personally told you that you lost the election, when that guy comes out and says you're guilty, that's devastating. That's not spin. That's not partisan attacks. That's someone who knows the facts, who understands the law, and who's saying, yeah, Trump absolutely committed crimes, and he knew exactly what he was doing. So let's dig into what Barr actually said, because the details here are incredible, and they completely blow up Trump's defense strategy in multiple cases. The election interference case, the classified documents case, all of it. Barr is systematically destroying every excuse Trump has given. Let's start with the election stuff, because that's where Barr is most damning. In interviews with CNN and CBS News, interviews that happened back in 2023, but that Barr has been reiterating and expanding on recently, he said flat out that Trump knew he lost the election. Not that Trump believed he lost, not that Trump suspected he might have lost, knew, past tense, definitive. Barr says he personally told Trump 3 separate times that there was no evidence of voter fraud that would have changed the election result. 3 times. He walked Trump through the claims. He investigated them. He had the resources of the entire Justice Department looking into it, and every single fraud claim fell apart. The voting machines weren't hacked. Dead people didn't vote in massive numbers. There was no bamboo in the ballots or whatever conspiracy theory was floating around that week. It was all nonsense, and Barr told Trump that repeatedly, but Trump didn't care. According to Barr, Trump kept pushing the stolen election narrative anyway. He kept claiming he won. He kept pressuring state officials to overturn results. He kept organizing the fake elector scheme, and Barr says that's a crime, that the moment Trump and his allies agreed to submit false electors, the crime was complete. Conspiracy against lawful certification, election interference, whatever you want to call it, it's illegal, and Trump did it knowing it was based on lies. That's intent. That's mens rea in legal terms. That's the difference between making a mistake and committing a crime. And Barr, who again was Trump's Attorney General, is saying Trump had criminal intent, that he knew what he was doing was wrong, and did it anyway. Now let's talk about the classified documents case, because Barr doesn't hold back there either. He told CBS News that Trump brought the charges on himself by refusing to cooperate. That if Trump had just returned the documents when asked if he had worked with the National Archives and the Justice Department, there probably wouldn't have been charges. But instead, Trump obstructed. He lied about having documents. He told his lawyers to lie. He allegedly had staff move boxes to hide them from investigators. He showed classified materials to people without security clearances. And Barr calls that conduct reckless, egregious, and likely criminal. Those are his words. Likely criminal. From the guy who used to run the Department of Justice. And here's what makes Barr's statement so powerful. He's not some outside observer. He was there. He was in the White House. He had conversations with Trump about all of this stuff. He knows what Trump knew and when he knew it. So when Barr says Trump knew he lost the election, that's not speculation. That's firsthand knowledge. When Barr says Trump obstructed justice on the documents, that's based on understanding Trump's pattern of behavior, his mindset, how he operates. This is insider testimony. The kind of testimony that can make or break a criminal case. And prosecutors are probably salivating over the possibility of getting Barr on the witness stand. Because think about what Barr could do at trial. He could testify about his conversations with Trump. He could explain that he investigated the fraud claims and found nothing. He could describe Trump's state of mind, his knowledge, his intent. He could corroborate other witnesses. He could provide context that only someone at his level would have. And juries trust former attorney generals. They trust career law enforcement officials. So if Barr gets up there and says, I told Trump he lost and he kept claiming he won anyway, that's incredibly damaging. That destroys Trump's defense, that he sincerely believed the election was stolen. Because how can you sincerely believe something when your own attorney general, using all the resources of the federal government, tells you repeatedly that it's not true? So this is a huge development. Bill Barr flipping on Trump, publicly stating that Trump is guilty, calling his conduct criminal. This isn't just political commentary. This is potential testimony. This is evidence. And it's coming from someone Trump can't dismiss as a partisan hack or a never-Trumper. Barr was loyal until he wasn't, and now he's not, and that changes everything. So let's break down exactly what Barr said, why it matters legally, and what this means for Trump's future, because this is big, really big. Alright, so let's get into the specifics of what Bill Barr actually said, because the sound bites are one thing, but the full context is even more damning. We're going to go through this case by case, statement by statement, and really understand why this is such a bombshell. First, the election interference case. This is the big one. This is the case about January 6th, about the fake electors, about Trump trying to overturn the 2020 election results. And Barr has been crystal clear about this. In his CNN interview back in August 2023, an interview he's referenced multiple times since, Barr said that Trump knew well he lost the election. Not suspected, not worried that maybe he lost, knew. And Barr would know because he was the one telling Trump. He said he had 3 separate conversations with Trump where he explained that the fraud claims were bogus, that they'd investigated and found nothing, that the election was legitimate. And this is important because Trump's entire defense has been, I really believed I won. I had concerns about fraud. I was listening to my advisors. I genuinely thought the election was stolen. That's his defense. Sincere belief, good faith. And if a jury believes that, if they think Trump really did believe what he was saying, then it's a lot harder to convict him of crimes that require intent. But Barr is saying that defense is a lie, that Trump didn't believe it, that Trump knew he lost and pushed the fraud narrative anyway. And Barr isn't just some random person saying this. He was the attorney general. He had access to all the intelligence. He personally briefed Trump. So his testimony on this point is incredibly powerful. It goes directly to Trump's state of mind, which is the key issue in criminal prosecution. But Barr doesn't stop there. He also talked about the fake elector scheme. And this is where it gets really interesting legally. Barr told CBS News that the special counsel's election interference case is a legitimate prosecution. Those are his words. Legitimate prosecution, not a witch hunt, not political persecution. A real criminal case based on real crimes. And specifically, Barr said the crime was complete the moment Trump and his allies agreed to submit false electors. Now let's unpack that, because it's a crucial legal point. What Barr is describing is conspiracy. In criminal law, conspiracy happens when 2 or more people agree to commit a crime. You don't have to actually succeed in committing the crime. The agreement itself is the crime. So even though the fake electors didn't succeed in overturning the election, even though Congress certified Biden anyway, the conspiracy was still criminal. And Barr is saying Trump was part of that conspiracy. That Trump agreed to the scheme, that Trump knowingly participated in trying to submit fraudulent electoral votes. And here's why that matters. Trump's lawyers have argued that the fake electoral scheme was just an alternate legal strategy, that they were preserving Trump's options in case court challenges succeeded, that it was all above board and nothing criminal. But Barr, who again understands the law better than almost anyone, is saying no, that's not what happened. What happened was a criminal conspiracy, a knowing attempt to subvert the lawful certification of the election, and Trump was at the center of it. That's devastating testimony. That's the kind of thing that, if Barr says it under oath in a courtroom, could lead to convictions. Because juries trust former attorney generals. They trust people with Barr's credentials and experience. So if he says it was a crime, juries are going to believe him. Now let's move to the classified documents case, because Barr has been just as harsh there, maybe even more so. He's called Trump's conduct in that case reckless and egregious. He said Trump brought the charges on himself, and he's explained why. According to Barr, if Trump had simply cooperated, if he had returned the documents when the National Archives asked for them, there would be no case. The government would have gotten their documents back, and that would have been the end of it. But Trump didn't cooperate. He stalled. He lied about what he had. He allegedly told his lawyers to lie to investigators. He had staff move boxes to hide them. He showed classified documents to people at Mar-a-Lago who didn't have clearances. And all of that, according to Barr, is likely criminal. Obstruction of justice, mishandling of classified information, lying to federal investigators. These are serious federal crimes, and Barr is saying Trump committed them. And again, this is significant because of who's saying it. Barr ran the Justice Department. He understands this department. He understands classification systems. He understands what the rules are for handling sensitive information. He understands what obstruction looks like. So when he says Trump's conduct was criminal, that carries weight. That's not political spin. That's a legal assessment from someone who knows the law inside and out. And Barr has made it clear that he thinks this is Trump's biggest legal threat, that the documents case is more serious than the election case because the evidence is so clear, because there are photographs of documents, there are witness testimonies from Trump's own staff, there are recordings, there's a paper trail. It's not a he said she said situation. It's documented obstruction. And Barr is validating what prosecutors have been saying all along. But let's talk about the politics of this, because Barr's flip isn't just legally significant, it's politically explosive. Barr was one of Trump's most loyal defenders during the first term. He was criticized by Democrats for being too close to Trump, for acting more like Trump's personal lawyer than the Attorney General for the entire country. He was the one who framed the Mueller report in a way that was favorable to Trump before the full report came out. He was the one who tried to downplay Russian interference. He was the one who seemed to be running interference for Trump at every turn. So for Barr to now come out and say Trump is guilty, that Trump committed crimes, that Trump knew what he was doing, that's a massive reversal. That's a betrayal in the eyes of Trump supporters. And Trump's base is not taking this well. They're calling Barr a traitor. They're saying he's part of the deep state. They're claiming he was always a Reno, a Republican in name only, who was secretly working against Trump, which is absurd if you look at Barr's actual record. But that's the narrative, because in Trump world, loyalty is everything, and Barr has broken that loyalty. He's put truth and law above political allegiance, and for that he's being vilified by the MAGA faithful. But here's the thing, Barr doesn't care. He's made it clear in these interviews that he thinks Trump's conduct was despicable. He's called it nauseating. He said Trump has no one to blame but himself. These are not the words of someone who's trying to stay in Trump's good graces. These are the words of someone who's done, who's burned the bridge, who's willing to tell the truth, regardless of political consequences. And that's important because it suggests Barr might be willing to testify. Legal experts are already speculating about whether prosecutors will call him as a witness. And based on his public statements, it seems like he'd be willing. He's already said everything publicly that he would say under oath. So what does he have to lose? He's already been branded a traitor by Trump supporters. He's already made enemies in the MAGA world. So why not go all the way? Why not get on the stand and tell a jury what he told CNN and CBS? That Trump knew he lost, that Trump obstructed justice, that Trump committed crimes. That testimony would be incredibly powerful, possibly case winning. But there's another angle here too. Why is Barr doing this now? What's his motivation? Some people think it's conscience, that Barr is a rule of law conservative who genuinely believes in the justice system and who can't stay silent while Trump destroys it, that he's speaking out because he thinks it's the right thing to do. Others think it's legacy, that Barr knows history will judge him harshly if he stays silent, that he's trying to rehabilitate his reputation by distancing himself from Trump's worst conduct. And then there are the cynics who think Barr is just trying to sell books or stay relevant, that he's saying what liberal media wants to hear so he gets invited on shows and stays in the public eye. Honestly, it's probably a mix of all three, but whatever his motivation, the effect is the same. He's providing prosecutors with ammunition. He's validating their cases. He's giving them a potential star witness who can speak to Trump's state of mind and intent. And that brings us to the big question. Will Barr actually testify? Will prosecutors call him? And if they do, will he show up? Based on his public statements, I say yes. He seems willing. He seems almost eager to go on record, but there are complications. Trump's lawyers could try to invoke executive privilege to block Barr from testifying about conversations he had with Trump. They could argue that communications between a president and his attorney general are protected, But that privilege isn't absolute. Courts have ruled that it doesn't apply when there's evidence of criminal activity, and if Barr is testifying about Trump committing crimes, that exception would probably apply. So Trump's lawyers could fight it, but they'd probably lose, and then Barr would be on the stand under oath, telling a jury that Trump knew he lost the election and tried to overturn it anyway, that Trump obstructed justice on classified documents, that Trump is guilty, and that could be the moment that seals Trump's fate. All right, let's break this down into what really matters, because there's a lot to unpack here. 3 big takeaways from Bill Barr's statements and what they mean for Trump's legal future. First takeaway, Barr just destroyed Trump's main defense strategy, and I can't emphasize this enough. Trump's entire legal approach in both the election case and the documents case has been to claim good faith, to say, I believed what I was doing was legal. I had advice from lawyers. I thought the election was stolen. I thought I could keep those documents. It's all about state of mind. It's all about arguing that he didn't have criminal intent, because most crimes, especially federal crimes, require intent. You have to knowingly and willfully break the law. If you genuinely believe what you were doing was legal, even if you were wrong, that can be a defense. It's not always a successful defense, but it's something. It creates reasonable doubt, and Trump's lawyers have been banking on that. But Barr just nuked that strategy. He's saying Trump didn't have good faith, that Trump knew he lost the election, but claimed he won anyway. That Trump knew the fraud claims were false because Barr personally told him they were false multiple times, with evidence, with investigations, with the full weight of the Justice Department backing him up, and Trump ignored it. So how can Trump claim he sincerely believed the election was stolen when his own Attorney General told him it wasn't? He can't, not credibly. And Barr is willing to say this publicly, which suggests he'd be willing to say it under oath. That's a prosecutor's dream. That's the kind of testimony that wins cases, because it goes directly to the element of the crime that's hardest to prove, which is intent. If Barr testifies, Trump's good faith defense evaporates, and without that defense, conviction becomes much more likely. The same thing applies to the documents case. Trump's argument there has been, I didn't know I couldn't keep these documents. I thought they were mine. I thought I declassified them. It's all been a misunderstanding. But Barr is saying no, that's not what happened. Trump obstructed. Trump lied. Trump refused to cooperate even when it would have been easy to just give the documents back. That's not a misunderstanding. That's knowing willful obstruction of justice. And again, if Barr testifies to that, it destroys Trump's defense. It shows a pattern of deliberate lawbreaking, not innocent mistakes. So legally, Barr's statements are devastating. They undermine every excuse Trump has given. They provide prosecutors with exactly the kind of evidence they need to prove intent. And they come from a source that juries will find credible, a former attorney general, a Republican, someone who worked for Trump. You can't get more powerful than that. Second takeaway, this deepens the split in the Republican Party, and this is huge politically, because the GOP is already fracturing over Trump. You've got the MAGA loyalists who will follow Trump no matter what, who think he can do no wrong, who see any criticism of him as treason, and then you've got the traditional conservatives, the rule of law Republicans, the people who believe in institutions and norms and the Constitution, and those two factions are increasingly at odds. They can't both be right. Either Trump is a persecuted hero fighting a corrupt system, or he's a criminal who broke the law and is finally facing consequences. There's no middle ground, and Barr's statements force Republicans to pick a side. Because Barr is a conservative icon, he's got impeccable credentials. He served multiple Republican presidents. He's been a champion of executive power and law and order his entire career. So when he says Trump is guilty, traditional conservatives listen. They take it seriously. And that puts pressure on GOP leaders, because now they can't just dismiss Trump's legal problems as partisan witch hunts. They can't say it's all Democrats making stuff up, because here's Bill Barr, a Republican, Trump's own attorney general, saying the same things, saying Trump committed crimes, saying the prosecutions are legitimate. So what do GOP leaders do? Do they defend Trump and call Barr a liar? Do they stay silent and hope it goes away? Do they start distancing themselves from Trump? It's a no-win situation, and you're already seeing the fractures. Some Republicans are praising Barr for his courage and honesty. Others are attacking him as a traitor, and the party is tearing itself apart over it. This isn't sustainable. At some point, the GOP is going to have to decide whether it's the party of Trump or the party of conservatism. And Barr's statements are pushing that reckoning closer. Third takeaway, this is about legacy and history. And I think this is actually what's driving Barr more than anything else. Because Barr is 75 years old. He's at the end of his career. He's not running for office. He's not trying to get another job in government. He's thinking about how history will remember him. And right now, his legacy is tied to Trump. He's the attorney general who defended Trump through Mueller, who intervened in the Roger Stone case, who seemed to prioritize Trump's interests over the Justice Department's independence. And that's not a good legacy. That's not how Barr wants to be remembered. So he's trying to rehabilitate his reputation. He's trying to say, look, I defended Trump when I thought he was right, but I'm not going to defend crimes. I'm not going to lie for him. I have limits, and those limits are the law. And you can see this in how Barr talks about Trump now. He calls Trump's conduct despicable, nauseating. He says Trump brought this on himself. These are strong words. These are the words of someone who's done making excuses, who's done being associated with Trump's chaos. And Barr is betting that history will look more kindly on him if he speaks truth now, even if it makes him unpopular with Trump supporters in the short term. Because in 50 years, when historians write about this era, they're not going to care about Trump's base or MAGA Twitter or any of that. They're going to care about who told the truth and who enabled lies. And Barr is making sure he's on the right side of that ledger. He's creating a record. He's giving interviews. He's making public statements. He's establishing that he warned Trump, that he told Trump the truth, and that Trump ignored him. That's Barr's defense of his own legacy. And it's also potentially devastating evidence for prosecutors. So where does this leave Trump? Well, in a worse position legally than he was before Barr started talking. Because now prosecutors have a potential witness who can speak authoritatively about Trump's state of mind, about what Trump knew and when he knew it, about Trump's intent. And that's the hardest thing to prove in any criminal case. You can show what someone did pretty easily. You've got documents, recordings, witnesses, but proving what they were thinking, what they intended, that's much harder. Usually you have to infer it from circumstances. But if you've got someone who actually talked to the defendant, who heard what the defendant said, who can testify about conversations and state of mind, that's gold. That's exactly what prosecutors want, and Barr is offering it to them on a silver platter. Now, will Trump be convicted? I don't know. Juries are unpredictable, and Trump still has good lawyers who will fight hard. But Barr's testimony, if it happens, would make conviction much more likely. It would corroborate other evidence. It would undermine Trump's defenses. It would give jurors permission to find Trump guilty because they know that even Trump's own attorney general thinks he's guilty. That's powerful. That's persuasive. So yeah, Trump should be worried about Barr. Really worried, because Barr knows too much. Barr was there for too many crucial moments, and Barr is no longer on Trump's side. He's on the side of the law, or at least that's how he's positioning himself. And that positioning could end up being the thing that finally brings Trump down. But there's one more thing to consider, the political impact. Because even if Trump isn't convicted, even if he beats these charges somehow, Barr's statements are still damaging. They give ammunition to Trump's opponents. They make it harder for moderates and independents to support Trump. They create doubt. And in politics, doubt is deadly. If people start questioning whether Trump really believed the election was stolen, if they start thinking maybe he did know better and lied anyway, that changes their perception of him. It makes him look less like a fighter and more like a con artist, less like a victim and more like a perpetrator. And that could hurt him politically, even if it doesn't hurt him legally. So Barr's flip matters on multiple levels. It matters legally because it strengthens the prosecution's case. It matters politically because it splits the Republican Party. And it matters historically because it establishes a record of what really happened, a record that will outlast all of us. So yeah, Bill Barr flipping, saying Trump absolutely knew he was guilty, calling Trump's conduct criminal and despicable. This is huge. This is the kind of development that changes cases, that changes narratives, that changes history, and we're watching it happen in real time. Trump's own attorney general, the guy who defended him for years, is now saying he's guilty, and once that's out there, once that's part of the public record, you can't take it back. It's there forever. And it's going to haunt Trump for as long as these cases are ongoing, which might be years. So buckle up, because if Barr ends up testifying, if he ends up on a witness stand telling a jury that Trump committed crimes, that's going to be one of the most significant moments in American legal history. A former attorney general testifying against a former and current president. It's unprecedented, it's explosive, and it might just be the thing that finally holds Trump accountable. We'll see. But one thing's for sure, Bill Barr just made Trump's legal problems a whole lot worse, and there's no going back now.